Welcome to the Two Marketeers podcast, where marketing swashbucklers Sean and Lindsay seek to demystify the fascinating world of modern marketing.
Each episode takes listeners on a storytelling adventure that informs, entertains, and inspires marketing enthusiasts of all kinds.
And now, here are your hosts, the Two Marketeers themselves, Sean Patrick and Lindsay. Wow!
Yeah! Woo! Take the stick! Hello.
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 Hey.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey.
What's up? Shawnee P, Sean Patrick Wise Guy. What's shaking, my man?
I'm up, Lindsay B. Wah, Rockstar Marketeer. What's up? I'm up.
You're up?
Yeah.
You're up. I wish I was in Europe instead of in my faux podcast studio.
I think people refer to it as the EU now.
I wish I was in the EU. Next time we're recording, me and you in the EU.
Ooh. Okay, let's make that our goal. Like, we know we've made it when we are broadcasting live. Well, it doesn't have to be. Yeah, live.
From a lavish apartment in Spain.
Barcelona.
Yes. Barcelona. See you in Barcelona. See you soon in Barcelona.
Look at us. Right on track as usual.
This is a little EPISEUDO. We're doing another EPISEUDO here today.
Woo woo.
Do people know what EPISEUDOs are?
It's our own trademark, not really, title for what in the podcast realm is referred to as minisodes.
It's a minisode.
It's a cop-out when you don't really want to do a full episode.
Which is actually even harder for us because we will not shut up.
Okay.
So yeah, what we were talking about today is when we decided to start exploring the idea of doing a podcast. Really, it was just Sean and I hanging out doing some consulting work together, and we're like, hey, we should do a podcast.
Woo!
Yeah.
So we booked it. Just booked the room.
We booked a podcast studio, and we put ourselves through the ringer. We did a 6-week self-imposed podcast training camp. Dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun.
We did it. Yeah.
Yeah. Sweatbands and all, hoodies.
We only called it podcast camp to alleviate the pressure of actually ever publishing a podcast. So it allowed us just to have fun with it, which we did.
Yeah, we're like, let's go test this out and see if it's garbage or if anyone actually might want to listen to what we have to say.
It was salvageable garbage. So without further ado, we want to set up our next EPISEUDO, which was our very first sampler from Podcast Camp. That said, it's actually from our last week. I call it the talent show of Podcast Camp. Funny story was, up until the last week, we were always in the studio, and then COVID happened.
And one of us was more kind of dialed into the reality of COVID, and one of us was a little bit more in the denial of COVID.
That's another Podcast Camp episode.
So interesting to note that almost a full year later, here we are, still in lockdown.
With an epic 17 episodes.
Yeah, so please listen to this EPISEUDO with the lens of these two naive podcasters. We're in 5 weeks of isolation at this time, but in our heart of hearts, really had no idea almost a year later we'd still be in full lockdown.
And with that, we MacGyvered together this episode, or EPISEUDO, I should say, where I found some kind of app on my phone and we recorded it from our telephones. So please excuse the campy quality, but it actually adds character, I believe. Sean Patrick Wise Guy, go on a bit of a rant because I felt like a brand was talking to me without having any idea of how I was feeling. And it kind of put me off. Would you say, Lindsay?
Don't worry, Sean. We're in it together. It was a very, what we say, kind of tone-deaf experience Sean was going through. So you can sense the aggravation of what this experience has caused. And also we kind of talk about being tone-deaf for the first time and what that means.
Have a listen and enjoy.
Enjoy.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Lindsay. This is Sean. How are you?
Hi, Sean. I'm good. Good morning. How are you?
Morning.
I'm good.
Good. Happy Friday.
Yeah, is it? I mean, not that it's not happy. Is it Friday?
Okay.
But yeah, for context, we're like, how many weeks are we into self-isolation here? I feel like for us, this is week 5. Like we are 5 weeks into COVID self-isolation.
5. Wow. The sound quality of the technology we're using is a little bit sketch. I actually went online and tried to see what we could do, but we're kind of at the mercy of the internet at this point. We're both home at our respective homes about, 30. You make it clear every time. 30 minutes without traffic.
Yeah.
Apart.
Which is never.
And we're on Google Hangouts, and the volume is off, and then we are calling each other old school. And then we're
Pahone.
Pahone. Oh, that's so good. And we're even using wired earbuds. So how
yeah,
about
we're
that,
back to
old school?
basics. We need reliability. I'm just going to send my pigeon instead. That's fine.
You would have a pigeon, and it would be it would be white.
Yes.
And it
like
would
my
have,
stallion eventually I'm going to own.
Oh my.
Yeah, but for context, we've been working through this podcast, trying to
We call it
figure
podcast
out.
camp.
Yeah, we've been in podcast camp, and we figured, what better time to figure out how to reassess, be agile, do some stuff, and figure this out. So we're doing one remotely and see what happens.
And it might be this is the first one we're playing the part legitly. Is that a word? Legitly? Sounds like a new app. Legit.ly.
Trademark that right now. Okay, we have to get off. We have a new business. I feel like that's what always happens. Every time we have a phone call, we have a new business. We come away with something new.
I think I have a name for our podcast. It's called. Is that the name of our podcast?
I think it should just be that.
Okay.
That's the only barrier that we have is the name of this podcast, and now I just feel like it should be called, again, Coffee with Consultants.
Oh, really?
That's exactly what we're doing right now.
I've never heard that one.
No, that was our physical coffee shop we were going to open.
Yeah, see, as a physical.
That's what that was. That's when we were like, fuck it all, we're going to just start a coffee shop.
Anyway.
No, but as we are moving into what likely will be a recession, coffee, lipstick, beer, that stuff's not going away.
Oh my God, there it is.
The lipstick effect in full force.
That's but that's our podcast. Would you say coffee, lipstick?
Coffee, lipstick, and beer?
Yeah.
Is that the name of our podcast? Is it?
That or
I love it.
It's your new coffee shop. It's your new bar.
Right. Yeah, but for people who don't know, the lipstick effect is that. It's that beer sales and lipstick sales will be 2 of the top things that will never drop in a recession because people still, it's like a cheap and cheerful way to feel good.
I've heard that. I think you might have told me. I have this great idea. It's called the lipstick effect, Lindsay. It's a joke we have where Lindsay refers, recommends things back to me.
John has so many great recommendations, and I have the memory of a goldfish, so it resets every 5 seconds. And so he'll be like, you need to watch this Netflix series. And I'll be like, okay, I'm going to do it. And then I watch it weeks later because I'm so behind. And I come back and say, have you seen this series? You need to watch this. And he's like, I told you about that 3 months ago.
See, but worse would be like, someone told me, a friend of mine told me about this really great thing. You have to see it.
At least I say a friend of mine. I could have said this chump I met on the sidewalk.
Chump. You're so old school. I love it. Chump. Hey.
Yeah, because I have my wired earphones in on a telephone call.
Right?
So I'm kicking it old school today.
All right. Well, let's try this. Last day of podcast camp. This is our talent show.
Da, da, da. I'm going to do the baton toss. I feel
so
like
what we're going to do, I think we're doing, just to frame this up.
Sure.
We're talking about sort of some kind of marketing moment that we would have had. And as a consumer or anything, it's just something that's happened in one of our day-to-days that we've thought about or it's happened. And it's just something we want to dig deeper in, and that's what we bring to these. Let me take over with what I'm going to talk about because it talks about, like you said, Lindsay, if you don't do it with the right intention, it becomes very apparent when brands not only aren't agile, but they don't even realize they're not agile, and they keep talking to you. Okay, my experience that I had was, it was Tuesday this week, and I write in my blog about recognizing that I have an email addiction. It's a whole thing, I realized, and email anxiety and all that stuff. So as much as COVID's been really good for my anxiety, and like for most people, because it's just sort of like, listen, there's not a lot of emails to check. I'm not getting all those
slow down.
I was. Yeah. So I was sitting down I blocked the time to write my blog post for the week, and I got an email from a retailer that I, quite honestly, opt into, and I just felt like, really, like, this is so inappropriate. And they were basically, it was definitely the straw that broke the camel's back, because I was just like, why? Anyone who markets me a promotion of a discount of something, like nothing has changed, really seems to put me off. And I was sort of like, why have I gotten, yes, okay, fine, but who am I, a marketer? But I got this email that basically said, we're in this together. We'll get through this. Sunny days ahead. It was a sunglass company. Be sure to get your 30% off. And
not the moment to sell me something.
Nope. And they've been pushing me 30% off every week, because that's what I signed up for.
Right.
And long before COVID started.
Yeah, so, tone deaf, right? No awareness.
Tone deaf. You need to be all context or no context.
Yeah.
It just was that trigger to be like, really? Like, I just dragged myself to my desk so I could be true to myself and do my blog post as part of my sort of discipline I'm trying to set in a world.
Yeah, I didn't need this.
And it's like, whoa. And the one thing I do and trying to stay mindful is, okay, so are you really mad at them? Right? Is like, what? Just delete it. Right? I have to be that person who annoys me.
But I am mad at them.
Just have some empathy. Show me you have a stitch of empathy. And what that made me realize is, I teach branding, and I try and bring it down to the most basic, right? So not using fancy words and kind of say it all relates back. But the purpose of branding is really to kind of humanize your brand in whatever way you can, and trying to make it as human as possible, because that's how humans connect. We're trying to communicate to a friend. We're trying to communicate to an acquaintance. The more human a brand can be, the more it has to stay true to that. So, I wouldn't say that the brand, the sunglass company, is like a friend or anything like that, but I trusted it, and I look up to it. It's the cool kid. I like to spend money on this kind of item every few years. It means a lot to me, and there's brands I trust. So does that make them, and literally, pardon the pun with the sunny days ahead, but does that make them a fair weather friend? Worse, they're actually bothering me when the weather's rough, but they don't want to help me. They want me to help them.
Yeah.
I guess that's what a fair weather friend can be, right? They're there when it's all great, but when they need you too, but when you need them.
Yeah.
So,
because I think there was a lot of brands, I think, are struggling to find a natural opportunity to correlate their brand to people. They're force-fitting. This is a perfect example of force-fitting the context to try and sell you something. But there's a lot of brands who are doing a really great job kind of cutting out the last part. The contextual relevance.
And they're not reaching out and telling us that they're
the contextual relevance in this moment is people are scared to go outside. You shouldn't be around other people, but it's still very important for mental health and all of that to get a breath of fresh air. Sunglasses are associated with being outside, in the sun. So they have a perfect moment to actually generate some content that can provide you of some value. Maybe there's some tips and tricks. Maybe they form a community of something around being outside and outdoor activity, a 10-minute breath of fresh air, that kind of stuff where they actually had an opportunity to bring people together and provide some additional value without trying to sell you something that you would have been like, that's cool. It's at least cool that they tried or that they're trying.
And that's how they always sell to me. There's that level of sort of, listen, they know that I like this brand, so they'll say, whatever. But the thing is now it all got thrown away because they're acting like they know me and they don't. And they're
it's about actually knowing you.
Yeah, and they should. But why do I feel this now, right? Is it because it's so sensitive? Or maybe I was just...
Because everything's so heightened, perhaps people, they obviously expect more and are turned off more easily.
Because we're less tuned out, right?
Yeah, we're so dialed in. Everything's so sensitive.
Like, the brand, I think, lost its humanity as I talked through it. And that just annoyed me because I don't want to be friends with a brand. I want to be loyal to a brand that's like a friend.
Yeah, that understands
knows
like a
me,
friend
wants
would.
to know more about me, wants to reciprocate based on that.
So, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you had a brand reach out to you at this time, if they actually asked you,
what matters to me, or how can they help?
Yeah.
Yeah. Love it. I totally would respond. So if I can ask something like, listen, we have a few questions for you to see if you have any ideas or can help us understand how we can better help our customers. Maybe I wouldn't, but I would at least go like, good on you. You know,
like even small, nimble brands, it's like if you could do something like that, I feel like that would be kind of cool.
Yeah. And I see the other side of that, though, is I'll see some more, like, personal brands and things like that, like on LinkedIn or Facebook, and they'll be, like, small business people like myself. Maybe I'm just jealous. But they'll put out something like, hey, people, in this crazy time, let's start conversation. What do you like? You know what I mean?
It can't be general.
Well, someone's like,
it can't be like a cleaning product company being like, what's your favorite kind of banana bread? And you're like, really?
But this was just a personal brand who's like a consultant. And he just said, hey, everybody, let's start a conversation. Tell me what you're reading. So a bunch of us just wrote what we were reading. And then he scolded us going, really, people? How about a description? And it was like, okay, asshole, you did nothing. And it was just
unless
kind of like,
he's actually going to do something with that, that question,
there was no empathy in it.
Then what's the point? Like, why are you wasting my time asking me a question if you're not actually going to provide any additional value out of it or engage with it for some reason?
You don't really care how this makes me feel.
So if you had one kind of takeaway that people could take from this around email, around empathy, like what would you want people to learn?
The biggest no-no is I had opted into this and had been an ongoing customer. And I feel like an idiot. I let them in. You know what I mean? And that's like, don't come to the party if you have nothing to contribute.
Yeah.
And that's what I'll tell a brand. It's okay to be quiet. No company, no retailer right now, other than maybe my grocery store, is doing any damage by not talking to me. I mean, I might get an occasional, like, we just want you guys to know, hang in there. We're doing the same. Okay, thank you. Thanks. You need to respect what I'm going through. Listen, understand, care, and be there. Okay, do we need to be there? That's the first thing I'll say to any one of my clients, right? The whole message is brands that assume they matter right now may be in for a rude awakening. Because that's the biggest mistake they made. They assumed they mattered to me right now, and they didn't go, well, maybe right now isn't the time.
Yeah, you've been taken down to some very basic human needs, and so figuring out what matters is the most important.
Yeah.
Boom! Sean, as per usual, we're out of time, so you have to stop talking. Okay. That's it. We're done.
Thank you. Well, everyone, it's all about having a little empathy, not just brands. So hang in there, and let's get through this.
This podcast is over.
That's it for this episode, my fellow marketeers. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed it.
If you did, subscribe to this podcast at thetwomarketeers.ca.
That's thetwomarketeers.ca. Spell it out.
Be sure to tune in for more marketing adventures every month from us, the Two Marketeers. But you can just call us Sean and Lindsay.
Actually, I would prefer Wise Guy.
Yeah, I know you would. We're not doing that.